Okay, so first off, Happy New Year, everyone. Yeah, I know I'm late, leave me alone. With this being my first video of 2025, I wanted to make it somewhat special. So I decided to look back at every movie I watched, every game I played, and every book I read in 2024. And when I did that, I realized that Atlas once again took complete control over every aspect of my life for yet another significant period of time. As a certified Persona fanboy, I can say without a shadow of a doubt that Persona 3 Reload was absolutely fantastic. It stayed faithful to the original game, allowing old fans to replay this incredible journey in a whole new light, and it made a whole lot of quality of life changes, making it easier for new Persona fans to play and enjoy what I think to be the best overall story out of the 3 mainline Persona games. Did it need a remake? Maybe not, but to the people saying that this is a bad remake, fuck you. I personally think this remake was everything it needed to be. With that being said, it definitely had its issues. But that's not what we're talking about today, baby. This game was easily the highlight of my entire year. Is that a joke? Kind of. Is that sad? Maybe, but I don't care. I have been dying to talk about this game ever since I finished it, and I was planning on it if it won Game of the Year, but fuck, I can't even be mad. So now seems like a good time as any, so here we are. I'm going to rank all 14 follower bonds from worst to best. Now, there's a few things I'd like to say before we get started. The first being that I think every follower in this game was at the very least good. There wasn't really a single bond that I didn't enjoy, but then again, I'm incredibly biased and this game is flawless in my eyes. With that being said, I'd like to make it very clear that these are simply my personal opinions. So when you clown me in the comments, take that into account. The second thing I wanted to say is that I will be ranking these according to the content within the bond ranks and nothing else. I won't be taking the main story into account because if I did, then this list would be kind of unfair. With that being said, here's your spoiler warning. So if you get spoiled, you can't get mad at me. Alright, let's go. I'm sure everyone saw this coming. Gallica is the only follower whose bond advances automatically as you go through the story. Which kinda sucks, but oh well. Okay, now we're starting for real. When we first meet Moore, he's portrayed as a very mysterious person we know really nothing about. The only things we do know about him is that he's trapped in this strange room, he lost all his memories, and that he's the author of the fantasy novel we carry around with us. We make an alliance with him, where he promises to help us master the power of the archetypes, and from then on, we have to complete certain quests he gives us in order to rank up his bond, where he'll give us some information on his true identity as he regains some of his memories. On paper, this sounds incredible. An interesting character drip-feeding us information, eventually leading to a grand reveal. What could be bad about that? Well, maybe the fact that we don't fucking learn anything. Oh, and by the way, there is no grand reveal. I would complete the quest he gave me, eager to find out more about who he is, and half the damn time I just got a big nothing sandwich. With that being said, this follower bond does complement the main story very nicely. There's a lot of foreshadowing that makes the moment when you do find out who he truly is near the end of the game a whole lot more satisfying. So for that purpose alone, I think it's great. But I believe bonds, social links, confidants, all of that should be mainly for learning more about the character you're spending time with. And this one didn't really do that for me. And not to mention that I said I would strictly be looking at the content within the bond, so yeah, Moore is in dead last. Well, not actually in dead last, but you know what I mean. This one hurts me to my core. Hulkenberg is easily one of my favorite characters in all of Metaphor. Her backstory, her design, everything is just great, so when the game first released, her bond was one of the ones I was looking forward to playing the most. And to my great disappointment, it kinda fell flat. The whole bond revolves around Hulkenberg's old friend, Redanth, who I shit you not, I had to look up while making this because I didn't even remember his fucking name. So this Redanth fella was executing a bunch of people for going against the Knights in even the slightest way. Mainly because he believes he got fucked by nepotism back when he and Hulkenberg were competing to be promoted into the Princess Guard. And as we all know, mass executing people is a big no-no, so Hulkenberg challenges him to a duel in order to stop him, in which he tries to cheat but gets rolled anyway, and soon after he gets arrested. Now, if you notice that I talked a whole lot about Redanth rather than Hulkenberg in that quick rundown I just gave you, then you get a gold star. because you are absolutely right. I learned more about Radonth in this bond than I do about Hulkenberg, which I don't think I have to explain why that's a big issue. It really does suck because of how incredible of a character Hulkenberg is, and I really wanted to know more about her, but fuck you, Radonth. At the very least, it was entertaining. Rank 2 in particular was pretty hilarious, and the very few moments we do get with Hulkenberg are very enjoyable. So, at least we get that. At first, Catherina's bond seems like it's going to be interesting. In the first half of her bond, the only way you can rank her up is if you cross paths with her gauntlet runner while you're traveling. When you do, she kind of raids you and takes on your whole party 1v4, which was really unique, and while the quote-unquote boss fight wasn't too difficult, I was still enjoying it, until they got rid of it. After that, it just went downhill. That's not because Catherina is a bad character or anything like that. Apart from a few other candidates, she's one of the characters we learn most about. She tells us her motivation for entering the Tournament of the Throne, and how she plans on screwing over the rich in order to help her people who are struggling at the moment. But after that, it plays out exactly how you would think it does. Due to planting these immoral ideas in her people's heads, a man named Manihat takes advantage of the situation and manipulates everyone into not only mugging and stealing from the rich, but from normal merchants alike. Catherina confronts them, changes their ways, blah blah blah, you get the gist. There's nothing exactly wrong with this bond, it's just very meh, you know? The only thing that stood out was gone after rank 4, so yeah, I can't place this very high. So Neuras is a little weird for me. Even now, as I'm writing this down, I struggle to really put into words what I feel about this bond. So basically, Neuras asks us to look around for a total of 8 lost relics inside of certain dungeons. We don't really know exactly what they do until the very end of this bond. So, we go around dungeons looking for these lost relics and turn them into him one by one inside of the Gauntlet Runner, where he'll tell us a bit about his past, back when he was in his prime, and the regrets he carries with him to the present day. Once you acquire the 8 lost relics, you find out that they can be used to create a weapon of mass destruction. And Neuras is given the choice between creating this ultimately incredible yet horrifying creation, or not going through with it, and destroying the relics so that no one else ever gets the chance to create this weapon. In the past, Neuras would have probably gone to work on this creation immediately without a second thought. But the much older, much wiser Neuras now knows better. And rather than letting that hunger for creating blind him like it used to, he now lets his newfound companions guide him into making creations for the betterment of the world. And so, he destroys our hard work one by one in front of us. The content within the bond is done very well, and you may be wondering why it's placed so low on this list. Well, that's because the actual execution of this bond felt very bland and repetitive. For the grand majority of this bond, we're just standing in the engine room not really doing anything, which made it feel more like an activity to level up my kingly virtues rather than being in a follower bond episode. And since I wasn't exactly dying to find out what happens on the next episode of Neuras' bond, I wasn't exactly stoked to be running around dungeons searching for these lost relics. But my biggest issue with this bond, by far, is very subjective. Like I said before, this bond is a little weird for me. And it's weird for me because I can see why someone could get a lot out of this bond. I'm sure there's a lot of people who can relate to Neuras, but in my case, I'm not really at a place in life where I can look back at the good old days, you know? So unfortunately, this bond doesn't really check with me. But hey, maybe in the future, I'll learn to appreciate it more. Eupha's bond was the complete opposite of what I expected from her. When we meet her for the first time, you are immediately drawn to her character. Her design is interesting, and her backstory of living her whole life thinking that her only purpose and the only thing that brought her worth was being a human sacrifice for the dragon god. I mean, come on, that is just classic Atlas being in their bag. Naturally, I was super excited to play through her bond, and I mean, I liked it, but I was a little let down. Her whole bond is basically just her story arc, but rather she's the one doing the saving along with us this time. And that's literally it, which is nice, I guess. Seeing her using what she learned back in her island to help another group of people who were going through the same struggles as her, in this case being a human sacrifice, was good. But I just feel like there was better things they could have done with her character rather than just resolving the same exact issue she went through like a month ago. Even just going around and exploring the world she was missing out on back in her island would have been nice to see, but I guess that's partly my fault for going into this with high expectations. But yeah, not bad, just disappointing. When I first found out that Bardon was one of the followers, I thought to myself, okay. To be honest, his bond probably would have been the last one I'd complete if it wasn't for the commander archetype. But he actually pleasantly surprised me. After exposing Joanna and having her executed, Martyra was left in a pretty bad spot. Bardon ends up deciding to take full responsibility for the town because, well, he loves it more than anything. After his wife and kid left him, the town was really the only thing he had left. So he wanted to protect it in any way that he could. The only issue with that is that the townspeople weren't very fond of his methods. And so they all hold a vote to choose their governor, in which Bardon loses to this old guy named Strohl. I think that's how you pronounce that. Which means that Bardon is no longer allowed to govern because the people don't think that he is fit to rule. And I mean, shit, man. You just can't help but feel bad for the guy here. Luckily, or well, I guess unluckily, a human sandworm shows up, and Bardon takes it down. Or rather, we take it down while he fucking watches us. On the other hand, Strohl does absolutely nothing out of fear. After this, he decides to give Bardon his governor duties back, and everyone is happy again. While this bond didn't exactly blow me away, I fully expected this to be near the bottom of my list. But I felt like they really did a great job at getting you to care about Bardon's character, and seeing everything work out in the end really put a smile on my face. I didn't find anything wrong with this bond, I just thought there were much better ones. Good job, Bardon.
My name is Leon Strohl de Halliatus. My home and my family were taken from me. I am the last of my house. I am the last of my noble bloodline. And in the name of my people, I will strike you down where you stand!
Strohl's bond is pretty much everything I expected from him. Excluding Gallica, he's the first true bond we unlock. And I mean, do I really have to explain why Strohl is an incredible character? I don't think I do. Basically, his bond revolves around us helping him rebuild his house. And that's it. I know, that sounds kind of underwhelming, but the delivery is honestly pretty impressive. A big part of this bond has to do with his inner conflicts. After their deaths, Strohl always thought he didn't really deserve his parents, and that he was a worthless son to them. And so, he wanted to do good by them, finding his people a home in a way that would make them proud. That alone was enough for me to place this very high in the rankings, but where this bond really shines is in rank 8, where we actually go to see Strohl's village. Or what's left of it, that is. It's here where we just sit on a bench in the village and have a heart-to-heart with him. And he thanks us for everything we've done for him up until this point. And he tells his parents to leave the fate of his country in his hands, and that he won't let them down. Strohl's bond just does a fantastic job at fleshing out his character even more, which is really exactly what a bond should do in this game. Strohl's bond can be summarized with the word textbook. It does everything it needs to do, and nothing more. And you know what? I'm happy with it. Before everyone gets mad at me, I just want to say that from here on out, I also don't agree with myself. I lost count of how many times I swapped the top 6 around, because the more I thought about each of them, the more I loved them all. These are all neck and neck with each other, and you could really swap them around in any order, and I wouldn't be mad at it. With that being said, I decided to put Basilio at 6, which, despite it being a pretty high placement in metaphor sense, I feel like this is gonna be a hot take. So let me explain myself. Basilio's bond mainly revolves around his friend from back when he was part of the Igniter experiments, Vinka, who is actually murdering a bunch of people and later asked us for help. A few months ago, Basilio wouldn't have had any issues with helping him out, but he's grown and now knows better. We try to stop him by warning the merchant he was going after, which, well, doesn't work very well, and Vinka completely loses his mind, and it's up to us to put an end to his suffering. This bond hits especially hard because weeks before, Fidelio died in Basilio's arms. Basilio lost 2 of the closest people to him in such a small period of time, but despite all his pain, he decided to keep moving forward and keep his promise to Fidelio and now Vinka to live on. This is just absolutely beautiful, but admittedly, it's also the same reason why I decided to place it at 6th place. As I said at the beginning of the video, I tried to exclude all main story bias when making this list, and rank them strictly from the content within the bond. So unfortunately, I can't really take Fidelio's death into account when ranking this. Which is bullshit, I know, but if I wasn't a bit more strict with the top 6 bonds, I would have been writing this fucking script for eternity, so please just give me a break. I still love Basilio and his bond to death, and like I said before, I could easily bump him up a few ranks. Just in this situation, 6 is where I got him at. Entering top 5 territory, I decided to put Alonzo up next. Similar to Bardon, Alonzo's bond caught me completely off guard. When you first meet this dude, he just seems like a sketchy guy that's eventually gonna fuck you over. But you really need that faker archetype, so you suck it up and you do the bond. You talk to him about whatever, blah blah blah, and then you get to rank 3, where his entire village gets burnt down and his mother dies in his arms right in front of you. She tells him to live on, but he doesn't think he deserves to, so he attempts to take his own life, in which we stop him by convincing him to live on, just like his mother asked him to. He agrees to this and tells us about his secret schemes that he was planning, one being kidnapping and blackmailing the same guy who caught him in his lies with the information he dug up on him, and the second being basically digging his own grave, as he took the blame for the death of his mother and the people of his village, and got executed right in front of us. But then turns out he's not actually dead, he just left. What the fuck is happening? This bond was just something else. You feel bad for all the horrible things Alonzo goes through. But at the same time, he kind of deserves it because he brought this on himself. He lied and manipulated people and, well, got caught. The drama and the schemes are all just done so well, and I probably would have placed this higher if it weren't for the ending. After 4 ranks of jaw-dropping stuff, the final rank feels a little underwhelming when he just sends a letter saying, "Oh, I'm alive by the way." That'd be my only gripe with it. But the highs in this bond are easily some of the best, if not the best, out of all the bonds. And that alone was enough for me to place it this high. I'm starting to sense a pattern here. Much like Bardon and Alonzo, I thought that Brigitta's bond was going to be alright. I just really wanted the merchant archetype. And well, you see her ranking. This bond is different from every other bond in the game. All the bonds will usually introduce a random character to act as the villain of the bond, and present some sort of problem for us to resolve. Brigitta's bond does this, except instead of introducing a random character to be the villain, they make the whole Sanctus Church the villain. You know, the actual villain of the entire fucking game. Because of this, Brigitta's bond focuses purely on her and no one else, fully pulling back the curtains on her character and why she would sell igniters despite hating them. She believes that money is power, and power is everything in the world because without it, you're essentially nothing. After this, we get to take care of her doggo, which she claims not to care about until he's stolen, and she crashes the fuck out and tracks down the perpetrator into a village that's essentially just a cover-up for the Sanctus Church. They later burn down this village and frame Brigitta in order to make the world think that the only way to defend against the violence of igniters is with equal destructive force, in this case being more igniters, the very igniters that Brigitta has been selling. After this, Brigitta falls to her knees. She believes there's nothing left she can do, and she wants to give up. She had lost all hope, but luckily, we're there to console her and plant just the smallest sliver of hope in her for the future. It is with this hope that she decides to take in the sole survivors of the village that burned down, who came for her head, and stop selling igniters, instead selling essentially toys that brought the world smiles and happiness instead of destruction and despair. Brigitta's bond is much more uncomfortable, for a lack of a better word. It covers the very real topic of poverty and the fears that come with it. And I mean, it's just done so well that I don't think my words could really do it justice. Leaving this outside of the top 3 was a pretty difficult decision to make, but ultimately I decided on it due to my lack of personal connection with this bond. Regardless of that, Brigitta is still such an incredible character, and the fact that everything that makes her so incredible comes from this bond speaks volumes as to why it should be this high. Home stretch, folks. I'm gonna have a lot of explaining to do with this one. I originally placed Basilio at 6 because I thought his bond got a lot of value from Fidelia's death, which was strictly a main story event, and therefore I didn't take it into account. And, well... Look, I know this may look hypocritical, and, well, it probably is, but I promise it kind of isn't at the same time. The first half of Maria's bond is just this poor little girl dealing with abandonment. Her father, who barely came to visit her, now for some reason can never visit her again. Being a kid, there was nothing she could do about this, and this both frustrates her and terrifies her. These kind travelers that take care of me and help me always have to leave. What if they never come back and abandon me? And then what if Fabian has to leave and never comes back? She'll be all alone, and there's nothing she can do about it. Normally, in a bond like this, we would just console her for a while, and eventually get her through what she was going through. Kind of like Nanako from Persona 4. To be honest, that would have been enough for me to place her bond very high. But at rank 4, the adult actually acts like an adult, and we get this beautiful mother-daughter moment between Fabian and Maria. And man, if this shit didn't punch a hole straight through your heart, then I'm convinced you're not human. From there on, Maria decided not to just accept her pain and sit around doing nothing, but rather use it in order to spread joy to others around her. This girl is like 10 years old, mind you, and she's going around reaching a helping hand out to a kid that didn't even remember his name due to being alone for so long, having no one to say anything to him. This bond just gave me everything I wanted from it, and even more, along with fleshing out Grand Tride as a city. And I mean, look, to all the Basilio fans, I'm sorry, but Maria solos. My favorite character in all of Metaphor switches around fairly often, but Heismay for the most part tends to be there at the #1 spot quite a bit. Heismay just brought this sense of maturity and almost safety to the party that I really can't describe without sounding like a complete idiot. It was unlike anything I had ever experienced in a JRPG, and much less an Atlas game. And, well, I thought his bond perfectly captured this feeling. Heismay's bond revolves around his son, who he failed to protect a long time ago and is now trying to find a resting place for his remains. We look around some, but ultimately, he decides that it would be best if he rested in Heismay's hometown. The only issue is that Heismay was now an outsider to this town, and the people ended up stealing his son's remains. Oh my god, just reading that out loud is horrible. We later find out that the elders did this because of their xenophobic cultural norms, which taught them growing up to be afraid of anything or anyone that was an outsider. Heismay then gives this big speech, telling all the elders that without change, they will pass on this wrong way of life to the younger generation and continue on for many generations to come. And if you were paying close attention to the brief explanation of this bond, you may realize that this village heavily represents some real-life countries. One example being Japan. I guess you could say this small village is kind of a metaphor. Sorry, I've been trying to fit that joke into this video for a while now. On the surface, this bond sounds like it would be a super sad time trying to help a father find a spot for his dead son to rest. Instead, it just allows Heismay's best characteristics to shine even brighter, showing off his wisdom and compassion, all while sending a very strong message saying that change is okay. I think this bond is flawless in every way, and to be honest, I'm shocked it's not in first place, but I definitely do like the next bond just a little bit more than this one. This placement may come as a surprise to some people because Juna's bond seems simpler on the surface compared to a lot of the bonds on this list, especially the bonds in the top 6. Basically, Juna decides to sing at a charity event, and here she meets another songstress, Murdis, who believes Juna robbed her of her spot in the charity event. And so, naturally, she burns Juna's dress and threatens to put poisonous flowers around the stage while she's performing. Yikes. But then, when the day of the performance arrived, she was so moved by Juna's performance that she decided not to go through with her plan. That's when a member of the Sanctism Church tried to poison Juna with a powerful drink that would destroy her throat. Pause. Leaving her unable to sing. Luckily, Murda stops them, but gets poisoned in the process. For the remainder of the bond, we help Juna confront her trauma, in order to get the cure to the poison from the same place where Juna was tied up and left for dead at a young age. This bond isn't nearly as shocking as some of the other ones on here, but it is very heartwarming. Seeing Juna want to help Murtis despite all the nasty things she did to her, because she understood the importance of having a voice due to the hope that singing brought her back when she was a slave. This bond is really close to my heart because of how well it portrays the main message of metaphor. Art, fantasy, music, all these things are tools that help mankind cope with anxiety and help us keep marching forward despite whatever struggles we may be facing in reality. Even in the first few minutes of the game, we are told how one of the first kinds of magic mankind created was actually music. This game encourages us to let fantasy be our strength, which is a message that has stuck with me ever since I finished it. So considering how this bond perfectly represents everything metaphor stands for, I just couldn't place it anywhere else but the #1 spot. Well, that took a while. This video was much longer than usual, so if you stuck around to the end, thank you so much. I really do appreciate it. I do plan on sticking to shorter format videos, but I'm definitely not against doing slightly longer videos every once in a while, so if you enjoyed this, please let me know. Anyway, once again, I want to say Happy New Year to everyone. I wish you all the best going forward, and I'm deeply grateful to all the people that have shown me support these past few months. Okay, this video is getting long. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you soon. See ya.